Okay, we are 5 seconds live.
Okay.
Okay, we're 31 second live and
Okay. Somebody, Beverly Matthew, just says I'm here.
oh,
Good to
hi
see you,
Beverly.
Matthew.
Thanks very much for joining early. You might be the first. I'm trying to access on my phone so that I can see
Oh,
everybody.
Jenny says she's the first.
Ah, forgive me, Comrade Senator Janice Allen. You may very well be the first. Thanks for joining. Okay, we're gonna give it 2 minutes before we start. Oh, Nicola,
Nicole.
Comrade Oles. All right, very good. You're always on. Thanks very much for joining. So, Julian, we have regular audiences from the
Oh, yes,
UK.
Diana, some MP from somebody from
Oh, Comrade Dane. No, Dane is going to be a doctor by next year.
Okay.
He is a member of the PMPYO from Southwest St. Catherine, and
Okay.
a very brilliant scholar.
Okay.
He trained the school challenge team from Old Harbour again, to remind me. Yeah. These are the coaches for the team.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's going to be back next year after he has done his internship. All right, so some of the comments will come up.
Right.
Yeah, so I think in the interest of time, we'll start. So, good evening again, everybody. We are here another Friday evening, as many of you are going to work, going home from work. Many of you will miss the live aspect of this live, but when you get home, you'll be able to catch it. So we want to welcome you. Thanks very much for joining. And today we have a special guest, just like the last time. Some of you saw his head back the last time when we had his wife giving us a tremendous interview on the financial sector. But today we have the opposition spokesman on finance, the member of parliament for Southeast St. Andrew. Somebody said that seat is now a safe seat, Julian.
Well,
So,
we work it and we work it until it becomes safe. Never
yeah,
take anything for granted.
well, and that's what they admire so much about you, that you're not taking it for granted. You are there with your constituents. So we want to welcome Julian Robinson, Daniel Dixon. Yes, good evening to you too. Yes, thanks very much for joining. I know that there are many more of you out there. And the first thing I want to say, Julian, is to encourage all of those friends of ours on this live to just send out a shout out to other colleagues to join us. So share the live, please. Yes, I'll comment to that, Nicola. Yes, share the live. So Nicola has preempted me, because the first thing I wanted to say is that we want to pay special tribute to Comrade Delano Franklin, who passed off after a period of illness. This morning, I gather. How do you remember Comrade Delano, Julian?
Well, let me tell you where I know Delano from. In the early 90s, when I was on campus, I was vice president of the guild, in fact, from 92 to 93. And that is where I met Delano. Delano has a unique distinction of being president of the guild, both at Mona and at Kayville. So when I got to Mona, he was the president at Kayville, having already served at Mona. And it was during a period where the university was um, beginning to introduce cost sharing. So I'd say, fortunately for me, my year was the last year that went through UA without paying any significant fees. But they started with the 10% of the economic costs and it went up. So I was vice president at Mona, Delano was president at Barbados, and all three campuses came together, the student leadership, to really push back and to fight against the introduction of the fees, because we knew it would have a detrimental impact on the students. So that was my introduction to Delano as a student leader. And everything from then, throughout the 30 years that I've known him, there's a consistency of someone who fights for social justice, someone who is committed to the people who are marginalized and oppressed, a patriot at heart who believes in Jamaica, but also a regionalist who believes in the Caribbean project. A very multidimensional individual, an author, somebody who committed to writing, because we don't often do that. We don't often put in words and in books the things that we have done. And he has done a number of publications. A special advisor to both Comrade P.J. Patterson and Portia Simpson Miller. He ran as a candidate for the party, but most importantly, someone who would do anything for the People's National Party. Whatever was needed to be done, you could call in Delano and he would step forward. Bright, distinguished, humble individual who really served his country and his party with distinction. And I will miss him. I know the party will. And I want to extend my condolences to his wife, Trisha, and the rest of the family. It really is a big loss to us as a movement.
Yeah. I too met Delano in school in the 70s. As you know, Michael Manley ushered in greater democracy within schools and their leadership and management. And I was one of the first students, having become president of the Excelsior Student Council, to sit on the school board. And Delano was the head of the island-wide body of students. So those days he was big in students' leadership. In fact, I was his junior then because of his tremendous talent and leadership ability from KC days across Jamaica. And I think he enabled so many of us to appreciate the importance of the voice of the student as decision makers in their respective schools. So I remember him from then, and all the things that you have said about him from then until now, those are true. And so I too want to join in expressing condolences to his wife, his rest of the family, and all his friends, indeed all of us, because we do love and will cherish his memory. So may his soul.
Just permit me as well, Philip, to Bishop Robert Thompson also passed away earlier today. And a lot of people may not know his connections within the PNP. Very unique. His father was a member of parliament in Westmoreland, and his mother was a councillor at the same time that
I
his
didn't know that
father.
about his mother. I didn't
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
I
His
know his
mother
father.
was a councillor in the same constituency that his father was a member of parliament. My family and his family are close because my family is from Westmoreland, so I've known him for most of my life, and he's close to my father and my aunts and thing. But a distinguished man of the cloth. Gave his life to serving God. Really a mentor, a friend, a guide, and I want to express my condolences to his wife Charmaine, his two sons, and the rest of the family.
It
Really
yeah.
sorely missed. I can tell you on nomination day in 2011 and 2016, when we gathered at Campion at the nomination center, he was the person who came and prayed for us
Wow.
during that period. He was always there. Not a partisan person by any stretch of the imagination, but just believed in serving and serving at if you call upon him, he would be there. So
Yeah.
really a big loss as well.
Yes, I know Bishop Thompson very well. Many people don't know that I am a practicing Anglican. In fact, I'm a member of that community for over 40 years or more. Actually, it's probably closer to 50 years now. I'm not giving away my age again. But I've known Robert for a long, long time, especially when he was the rector at St. Andrew Parish Church. And he has always been very kind, compassionate, and somebody who really uphold all the principles of the faith. So I want to join with you too in sending to his wife and family our deepest sympathies. Wow, it's been a sad day,
Sad, yeah,
sad day
sad, yeah.
so far. I want to lighten it up a little bit because I have something to tell you that I'm sure you're going to laugh at me about. But 2 weeks ago, I felt like I was getting a sore throat. And so, I did a video call to a doctor, a good comrade of ours. And when he examined me, because we don't have time to go to doctors anymore, you can do this thing now by way of technology. He says, you're coming down with something. So I said, Doc, I need to clear this thing up quickly because I am going off on 1 week vacation to a certain country. And no, I said, listen, I work hard and nobody going to stop me from taking a little break. And he said, all right, write a prescription for me. I'm going to go. And 5 days pass. I called the doctor and said, listen, all right, the sore throat gone, but I still feel like the sinuses are draining. And I can't go to this place if my sinuses not intact. And he said, all right, okay. Pick up another prescription. So I go, not me, my driver went, got the Angela Chaplin, don't talk about my secret. So wait now, I went, got the prescription, and on the fourth day, this is after I got 3 different items. On the fourth day, after I've taken off one of the items, I got a call from a driver. Said, Mr. P, the pharmacist called me. There was a mix-up with the prescription.
Gave you like a blue pill.
I wonder if I should really go into the details. So when I found out now, I called back the doctor and said, Doc, this is what happened. I got so and so. I never even look at the pills I was taking. I was so anxious to make sure that everything clear up. So he says to me, well, Comrade Paulwell, you are rid. If there was ever any problems you had down there, a problem that the prescription that I got was for a woman with a certain problem. Anyway.
So did the prescription help you? Huh? Did it help you in that regard?
He said it's not going to help your sinuses, but it will clear up everything else that you have in your system. So I think I can travel now feeling that I'm quite healthy and clean. Anyway, I wanted to do that because, boy, it's been a rough day. Janice Allen, anyway, forget about that. I don't want to hear about it again, all right?
What happens in that place stays in that place.
No, but Julian, people think that is just frolicking, but I have found it deeply spiritual. And that telecommunications policy that was developed in 1999 came out of a post-Juve activity where I went home in mud at 6 o'clock. And during the washing off of the mud, it dawned on me that, we have to do something about Cable and Wireless and its monopoly. And that even though they had very powerful and strong friends all around Jamaica, we had to take them on. And I left Trinidad resolved that that was going to be a mission. So don't knock Juve. Welcome again, Julian. Welcome again. We're going to ask everybody to share this live. We are going to have a serious discussion now. I just came in from Negril. These days I practice some law. So I was down there. But it's amazing, Julian, in the last 3 or 4 months, the level of anger, the level of dissatisfaction that I'm sensing on the street with the ordinary Jamaican people. Today I was mobbed and I was there on business, but when somebody trying to talk to you, you better listen. There is a level of anger. And for the first time since 2016, this anger is directed squarely on the government of Jamaica, led by Prime Minister Andrew Holness. And now I'm seeing more and more anger at the Minister of Finance. Is that your experience as well?
It is, and it's a combination of factors. It's not just what is being done, it is how it is being done too. And people feel there's a level of arrogance, that there's a level of contempt. So, if you take the current anger, it's a combination of a number of things. It's the SSL issue with so many unanswered questions related to that. It is the Road Traffic Act issue as well. And again, how that has been handled. So sometimes it's not always what you have done, but it is how you do it. And my sense is people are getting tired of what they would consider an almost contemptuous approach and attitude of the government. There's a high level of arrogance in terms of how they deal with and respond to legitimate concerns that are raised by citizens of the country, and almost a
Yeah.
disregard for genuine feedback on issues.
Yeah.
And I've seen it in the public sector compensation review, and I've also seen it in even the way this SSL issue is being dealt with.
You
So,
know, I find what has typified JLP administrations of the past and now is this thing called arrogance.
mhm,
Arrogance. And Jamaican people despise
yeah,
arrogance because they put up with a lot of nonsense,
yeah,
There's an appetite there to endure a lot of negative things. But when a government drunken by this 49 seat majority
yeah,
that
yep,
they believe they got. And they
yeah,
don't understand that it was the first time so few people
came out to
were
vote.
voting for a government. So
Mhm,
they're drunk on this thing that they have 49 seats
mhm.
and they have become the most arrogant government in our history. You touch on the SSL matter.
Let me deal with SSL first,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
let me separate them. I want to start with the fraud issue. Obviously, there was a major fraud that took place there. And I don't think anybody should be under any misapprehension that one person could have been involved in that. There had to be complicity at significant levels within the organization for that fraud to take place. What is it that I want to see? I want to see an independent investigation. And I stress the word independent because if you look at Jamaica's track record in dealing with white collar fraud, we have a poor track record. Nobody get locked up for FinSac. Nobody get locked up for Olin. Nobody get locked up for Cash Plus. Nobody not get locked up for Worldwise. We don't have a good track record of dealing with the masterminds. MOCA was established as an independent law enforcement agency, and I would like to see MOCA taking the lead in this investigation. I have no issue with FID and fraud squad, etc. But something like this, I want to see MOCA leading. And I would like to see them updating us almost on a weekly basis about the stages of the investigation. We know they can't give you specific details because it's an ongoing investigation. But
yeah,
I want the updates coming from them, not from the Minister of Finance. And the reason I don't want it to come from the Minister of Finance, there may be things in that investigation which may implicate people within the Labour Party or may be adverse to the government. And it shouldn't be him who should be providing the public with that information. So that's the first thing.
yeah,
Secondly, I think it's important for us to understand what the terms of reference of the FBI's involvement is. I think everybody welcome. We call, and it's important to note,
yes,
even before the announcement, we called for overseas help. We felt there was a need for overseas independent forensic expertise. So we welcomed the FBI and we have welcomed the signal that they're going to get overseas expertise. But we want to know what the terms of reference is. Now, is the FBI going to report to the local law enforcement? I mean, there must be some collaboration because they don't have any jurisdiction to prosecute people here in Jamaica. So, what is the scope of their work that they're going to be doing here? Is it just about SSL? Is it going to go wider if they find that there are Jamaicans who may be US citizens who may be involved in activities that may interest them? So we need to know what the scope of their involvement is. Third, we need to know which forensic agencies have been contracted.
yes,
We need to know what their expertise is, and again, what the scope of the work that they're doing. So for me, that is the first part of the fraud investigation.
Right.
The second track now is to deal with the FSC,
By the
financial.
way, you see that comment by Johnny Salem that maybe Mocha should report directly.
Yeah, yeah. Because let me tell you why. There are too many question marks about very well connected people who may be involved in SSL. People
Right.
may be connected to the government and otherwise. And it's important that you have that independent investigation so that
Right.
people don't feel there's any sacred cow. There's no untouchable person here. Now, the one good thing, the fact that, and I say good, the fact that Bolt was defrauded, it means there's a level of external scrutiny that
Yeah.
is on this SSL matter, which probably would not have taken place if he wasn't involved.
And of course, we express our regrets
To him and the others.
to that.
But
Yes.
let me say something, Philip. I got a letter yesterday of from a 79-year-old resident of my constituency. I
Yes.
obviously won't call her name. She wrote to me and she said, I am a retired teacher. I don't have children. I don't have siblings. I've worked hard for all of my life and I saved my money and I invested it in SSL. And she said she has no other source of income. This is what she lives off. And she was basically writing to me to say, listen, she wants to ensure that this investigation is done properly so she can get back her money. So I want people to appreciate Bolt is the name that we hear about, but there are
Yes.
a number of other investors, like this lady in my constituency, pensioners, retired people who
Yes.
trusted SSL, put their hard earned savings there, and right now have nothing at all. Nothing at all.
You
So
want to speak about FSC as well.
yeah, so let me come. So one track is to deal with the fraud investigation at SSL.
Right.
Now, the role of the FSC, in my view, has to be critically examined, right? The first thing we call for is for the Auditor General to go in there and do an investigation. Why? Because it's important to know why the FSC acted the way it did or why
Right.
it didn't, right? And there are some obvious questions which jump out. We're seeing from 2009 to 2013 to 2017
Right.
very serious concerns being raised by the FSC about operations of SSL. Now, in when you look at some of the concerns that have been raised, the obvious question would be why wouldn't the FSC have taken stricter or more strident enforcement action?
Right.
It's a legitimate question because the FSC has taken stronger action against other companies. It's something that's not well known. In the last year, the FSC has revoked licenses of 6 companies. I'm not going to call them name, but
Right.
people in the industry know for things that I would consider far less egregious than the things that we have seen in SSL. So the first thing we want is the Auditor General to go in there and do an audit. Why? Because she's independent, she reports to Parliament, and it's the quickest way to find out what took place. The
Okay.
second thing we want is we want a full release of all the FSC reports on SSL. The minister said, oh, we can't do it because it's not in the national interest. No, it can't be. Because what is happening now is that parts of the report are being leaked to specific media houses, and media houses are carrying one report here, one report here. The public has a right to see what the FSC did, what they recommended, because my view is that the FSC was being thrown under the bus, in my view. They were being used as a scapegoat. They had a press conference, which I felt was a bad idea from the beginning, because if they knew they were constrained from speaking openly, then they shouldn't have called a press conference. And the press conference didn't help. And then effectively, the executive director was fired. I mean, he was asked to resign, he resigned, and the board was changed. But I want to know throughout the period, what recommendations did the staff make re SSL? What did they send to the board? Did the board support all their recommendations? What reports were sent from the board to the ministry? We know that one went to the minister and him say never see it and never read it. But Philip, you worked in government, I worked in government. We both know that when you come into a ministry, a permanent secretary would brief you and tell you what the critical issues in agencies are. And certainly an agency like the FSC that reports to you, which is regulatory, a normal thing is that you should be having regular meetings with them to find out what is going on, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that them send you a report and you say nobody never bring it to your attention, that has to be, you have to be held accountable for that. That
Yeah.
nobody in your office would see a report of that nature and not believe it is critical to bring it to your attention when they look at that report. We know a minister can't read every correspondence. Nobody is saying that. But something like that should have been brought to his attention.
I
And
would say, Julian, and you're correct. Having been there, a minister cannot read everything, but there are agencies and agencies. The
right,
FSC represents a regulatory body that is at the heart of the economy. It is dealing with your financial sector. And I would think that those reports must get the minister's attention, apart from
absolutely.
everything else that he
Anything
would.
else? Yeah. I mean, people remember, the FSC, the assets that are regulated by the FSC from the non-banks is larger than the assets that the Bank of Jamaica regulates from the banks. The securities dealer sector is that big.
Yeah,
So the fact that somebody saw the report, stamped it, read, but for whatever reason didn't bring it to his attention, that's a
yeah,
big, in my view, a big dereliction there. And
yeah,
and again, even if you are not getting reports, somebody now must pick up the phone and say, call the executive director and say, what happened to the report? I mean,
right,
how
right,
come I don't get a report from you? What is going on?
yeah,
So to me, that issue raises a whole set of questions. And the minister said, oh, when he took over, files were shredded. No, I don't know of that practice at all. I
yeah,
mean, that's why you have a civil service. The civil service is there to ensure continuity. And you get briefings from your senior staff and your permanent secretary on what the critical issues were. And he would have taken over from somebody within his own party, or they should have handed over to him.
yeah,
So again, there are questions really about, this fact that they're saying they knew nothing about it. Now, in our case, Peter Phillips acknowledged that he knew, which is the right thing because a minister must know. And
right.
the FSC took action. So it really raises a number of questions about what took place, which is why I believe all those reports should be made public and there must be that independent investigation to find out why the FSC acted the way it did, because it
Right.
has raised too many questions about the appropriateness or inappropriateness of their actions in this case.
Yeah. But there are some comrades who feel that we have been too light, especially on the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance. But I think it is fair to say that we are early in these investigations,
Absolutely.
and we anticipate a lot more will be coming into the public domain because there must be, we believe that people are connected and are affected that could be at the heart of our government.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean,
so
there are obvious questions. I mean, the prime minister had monies there, closed his account. You know, people might ask why? Why at that particular point in time? Was he alerted to issues that may have been affecting the company, or he just decided to close his account just so? Those are obvious things which people are going to legitimately question in an environment like this. And
can I tell you something, Julian? When I was in the cabinet in the early 2000s, when Carlton Finance was in trouble, the Minister of Finance came to the cabinet and said, Carlton Finance is in trouble. I asked a question. I said, Minister, I have a little money in Carlton Finance. What can I do? And he was quite plain, and I accepted. You can't touch it. Wherever the others go, you go too.
mm,
So even though I know, and you could say that is insider knowledge,
right,
it was inappropriate for
mm,
me to withdraw my money from Carlton Finance.
right,
And I know it was going to fail,
right,
but that's how it is.
yeah,
You
and
can't use information that you have access to due to your position to safeguard yourself while others are at risk.
And those are very legitimate questions, which I believe at some point need to be answered. You know, what was he aware of? Was he aware that there were problems there, and what precipitated the withdrawal of his funds? So, you know, I hear the concern that people think we need to go harder, but what I would say, as you have acknowledged, we are in the early stages of this. I believe the Auditor General is there doing that special audit to determine, and I'm talking about FSC now, because she doesn't have jurisdiction over SSL. FSC, to understand really what took place in terms of how they made decisions. We want to know, for example, did the staff make recommendations to the board, and did the board accept those recommendations, or did the board say no? You know, those are things that board minutes would be able to tell you, and it's important to note because again, there are question marks about individuals on the board and whether they are related, connected to parties who are close to SSL. So those are again very legitimate questions which would bring some clarity as to why the FSC acted the way it did. So
Yeah.
we are going to continue to press for the independent investigation. We're going to continue to press for a release of all of those reports, which would have been made to the ministry, so that public confidence can be restored. You know, I tell you, know, somebody from the States called me and said, this thing has impacted us in a way that people don't even imagine, right? Because all the news, the international news organizations have carried this. People are now questioning whether they can do legitimate business with Jamaica
Yeah.
and whether if they invest in Jamaica, the money going to be safe,
Yes.
right? Because
Well,
of the impact of both. So it's
let,
a
let us
real
focus.
issue
Yes.
for many people in the diaspora.
Let us continue to focus on Minister Nigel Clark. I remember many years ago, he was the one who introduced this 5 and 4 concept. And one of these days, we're going to come back to that because even though they are crowing about growth in the economy, we are still just back to where we were
To
before COVID.
pre-pandemic levels, yeah.
Right. But we know that we are seeing some restlessness amongst government workers across the length and breadth, from the police, the teachers, the nurses, even those who have accepted
Absolutely.
the wage settlement recently. I can tell you, and as we get into this phase, and thanks very much, Comrade July, if we could just invite others to share the live. Today, Julian, somebody sent me some information because they saw that we were going to have this discussion. And the person is from PICA, Passport, Immigration, and the Citizenship Agency. They are the ones who deal with passport, of course. But when I hear that they are restive
Yeah.
and that they are likely to take action, you can imagine the impact on our airports, tourism. I know I want to leave too, so
Right.
I don't want to say any restlessness over there, but
But
we,
let me tell you why
yeah,
there's restlessness.
yes,
The restlessness is too. All right. Let me start off by saying, as a party, we support in principle what the government is doing, which is to rationalize from 300 different pay scales to about 16 or so. So we support in principle. But from the very beginning, we said to the minister, this process has to be done in a transparent manner. And it is not. And that is why you have this restlessness. There are people with, it's not just that people want more money. Yes, everybody wants more money. But the reason people are restless is not just money. There are genuine concerns, for example, about people are at a particular scale right now. They want to know what is the basis for moving them in the new system to this scale, right? And they haven't been able to get answers to those questions. The rationalization, particularly for the teachers, will eliminate certain roles. In a school, you have the headmaster and the deputies, but then you have middle managers who really manage the day-to-day things. It is going to have a negative impact on them. So the whole structure within a school setting is going to be impacted by this, right? Now, what has been happening, for example, is some of the unions very early, and I can't speak on their behalf, jumped out quickly and signed this thing. It's clear that they didn't know fully what they were signing because even the JCSA, who represents most of the civil servants, They are now raising concerns about things that they didn't even know about, but they were one of the first set of people to sign off on the thing. You have contract workers, for example, who are being treated in a discriminatory manner where they are not eligible for any retroactive pay. Now, let me explain, for example, with doctors. 70% of the doctors in the public sector are contract workers. They get employed by the regional health authorities on contract. They don't have a choice. It's not that them say they want to be permanent or they want to be on contract. Contract is the only thing that they can get. So imagine if you have two doctors doing the same rounds, working the same hours, one who is permanent, qualifies for retroactive, and the contract worker don't get nothing. Contract workers are arrested.
Yeah.
When you say 95% of the teacher delegates reject this thing, out of 580 votes is only 25 vote in favor. So 95 rejected it. So that tell you it means teachers of all persuasion, all religion rejected this thing outright. The police are nowhere even near signing off on this thing. You spoke about PICA. The air traffic controllers are arrested too. The fire brigade has sent a 10-day ultimatum to the ministry. Customs and TAJ, whom the minister met with on Tuesday, but the feedback I've gotten from workers there is that their questions were not answered, even though there was a meeting.
Right.
They expected clarity, they never get no clarity. So I'm telling you, there is significant restiveness across the public sector, and a lot of it has to do with how the negotiations have been managed. They've been managed poorly. People don't legitimate questions people have not been answered, and
Right.
and people not just going to take this argument that, oh, everybody going to be better off, and trust me on my word that everybody, no. Inflation has been running 10% last year, 10% this year. And remember, official inflation is different from food inflation and
Right.
transport inflation, because food inflation is much higher than that, and
Right.
transport inflation is much higher than that. So people want to even be back in the same position that they would have been 2 years ago.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
and you and I know there are still some groups of public sector workers who, at this date, have had no discuss. There's been no discussion, no consultation, nothing with them to say this is where you're going to end up. And the minister wants to conclude this by March 31st. Isn't that
That's
going to work?
impossible. That's impossible. I'm seeing from PICA person that salary is a major issue and it is going to come to the forefront. But they have some immediate issues that they want to see resolved. And I'm happy that they've mentioned that the NW is engaged with management and with the minister, but they're not getting any breakthroughs there. So I'm hoping that, again, this arrogance that has become typical of this government will recede and people will come down and realize that it's important to meet and have discussions to resolve burning issues rather than wait for it to boil over.
I think we are
Yeah.
at the boiling over point,
Yes, yes,
because you see, get a lot of their remuneration in allowance.
yes. All right, I think Julian's bandwidth is decreasing. Julian, are you still online? Are you hearing?
Yeah, okay, sorry about that. Yeah, a lot of the workers get a significant part of their total package in allowances. So when you move those allowances, which were previously non-taxable, into the taxable category, it means they have a much higher gross, but
Right,
their net is going to be taxed. The gross is going to be taxed significantly higher, and they may end up with the same or the less in terms of net. Now, the minister's argument is that it means you will retire on a higher pension. Now, that may mean something to somebody who is 55 or 60, who is close to retirement. But for a 35-year-old, that don't mean nothing, because they don't necessarily plan to work in government for the rest of their life.
right.
So the fact that yes, it will positively impact your pension is not necessarily enough of a pull for the younger set of workers who may be looking for other options, because not everybody going to spend their entire career in the civil service. So, the challenge that many of them have is that they don't know clearly where they're going to end up at the end of the day. And the
Right.
questions that they have had have not been answered in a satisfactory manner. And that is
Yeah.
really what has created this restiveness across so many of the groups in the public sector.
A major fiasco has been the implementation of this Road Traffic Act,
Yeah.
and whether it's an amnesty or not, and then to be two-faced about it, again typifying the high level of arrogance on the part of the government.
I mean, you
And
know what I found every time they say, and I've heard all the well, I would say maybe Minister Shaw is the most humble of the ones who have spoken. But when
yes,
you hear Minister Morgan or Minister Green, they're coming back to this thing, oh, is Omar Davis passed this in 2014? But you have been in government from 2016 till now. It's 7 years you've been at the wicket. And you went tell me that, oh, it's because Omar passed it in 2014? What rubbish. When you have been government, yes, it goes to a joint select committee, and yes, there were PMP members on the joint select committee, but you have had 7 years to review this legislation, and you want to now blame the opposition for all the things that you never go through and see and recognize that they would be problematic, and it's the opposition fault because going back to 2014, that is the kind of arrogance that people looking out on.
absolutely.
Total arrogance. It would have been better if they acknowledged, say, all right, listen, there were things we overlooked. We're going to review and come again. But it's public pressure that forced them into this position because they didn't really want to do anything. And they have really, again, is another case. And let me be clear. We support the overall thrust of the new
Yeah,
Road Traffic Act because there's too much indiscipline on the road. And I
right.
want to be clear about that. You need discipline on the road. But it is clear that there was not, one, sufficient public education, nor engagement with the critical stakeholders to make a determination about what made sense and what doesn't. So, for example, you have something in the Road Traffic Act which pretty much has crippled the learning driver industry as an example because there's no way for them to get licenses to operate. And so some of them have had to close down their operations until some clarity is brought to bear on this thing. Now, then what? You're going to turn around and blame a PMP government for that when you have been at the wicket for 7 years and you have had so many opportunities to review this thing, to make adjustments. That is what people are getting upset about, that arrogance and seeming contempt
Yeah,
of the government for the people of Jamaica.
yeah. Next week is the state opening of Parliament, and we are going to be in for another ride, another throne speech. Somebody said to me the other day that it is important to be over ambitious, even though you're only achieving 5% of the targets that you set. I mean, this year I have counted, and we have had the fewest number of laws, real laws passed, not counting the COVID years, than in decades.
Yeah,
And yet there's a ministry that was established
just for
to
that.
just for that, just for that. And the only bill that we're seeing drafted in this year is a Bail Act coming from that ministry. I mean, the ministry has failed on the constitutional reform agenda.
Absolutely. I
And
mean,
and
I said from the beginning, I didn't feel there was any need for an establishment of a new ministry. I mean, I don't know what drove that, whether it's personality, politics, or what, but all of these things could have been done under the ambit of the Ministry of Justice.
of
But be
course,
it as it may, I mean, you put in a new structure, you're spending more money, but in reality, few bills have been passed. If you look at the work of the committees, which are chaired, the government insisted on putting government members to chair these committees. There have been very few meetings of any of these committees, although there are a lot of live issues that could be dealt with. They haven't brought them to the table. So really, yes, it's good that Parliament starts at 2 o'clock, and you can give them credit for that. But there's not much else that you can really say has been a great legislative year at all for
yeah.
the Parliament.
They boast about the improvements, the revenue collection, and they love to look back at PNP, and they have not credited us with the greater efficiency that we've seen over the years of increasing revenues, year over year because of the systems that we have put in.
Absolutely. So, this year the government will probably end up collecting close to 100 billion more than projected in tax revenues. Now, there are a couple of reasons for it. We have had growth, and by growth, I mean we are recovering back to pre COVID levels, but the economy has grown and will probably go about 4%. Inflation has been a contributory factor. And I said it in my budget debate last year, and the minister went on and went on. But in his supplementary, he acknowledged the role of inflation. What we mean by that? When the price of goods and services go up, GCT collections going to be on a higher number. The imports, we have import duties on items coming into the country. So when you have those items going up, the duties are a percentage of the item. So again, you're going to collect more. For example, at the beginning of the pandemic, freight prices went up 4 or 5 times. So you're collecting on a large amount. So we have benefited to some extent by inflation. And also, and I challenged the minister at the last, when he did the third supplementary. The public sector compensation review, part of that is self-financing. Because when people's gross salary go up, you are going to collect more taxes from them. So of the 28 billion in the last supplementary, he said about 7 of that comes from the new compensation package, which really means you're taking more from the people, right?
Yeah.
Based on the new tax structure. So, you're going to have a whole heap of chest beating to say, oh, we collect how much billion and blah, blah, blah. Most of that comes from the people. It is the people of Jamaica who have borne the burden of those taxes. And it's really them who, if they're going to give back, should be given back to the people in a number of different ways. And I want to say, Philip, we started this fiscal responsibility framework,
Yes.
right? When we took over in 2012,
Right.
we were in crisis. We had no deal with the IMF. We as you know, we had to go to the Black Caucus to get them to help us get back a deal.
Sister
Right?
Peter.
Sister P, right?
And Peter.
So we started this fiscal responsibility thing. We paid a price for it because to get the economy back on track, we had to implement some stringent measures, which were painful and politically painful as well. So they came to the wicket to bat on a good wicket, a very good wicket. We had to deal with the ball bouncing high and the ball turning. They came and they got a good wicket to bat on, right? And they had a foundation on which they could move forward. You talk about reforms in the tax thing, which has made tax collection easier, so you can collect more tax. That started with us. But there's never any acknowledgement of what took place before them because it's almost as if the world started with them, right? So, we are committed as a party to keeping the fiscal framework and being responsible. But we also recognize that there are areas that we have to make bigger investments in. We have an education system which, quite frankly, is an apartheid system, which fails the majority of people. Now, if you don't invest in that, you're going to just be turning out people who are recruits for gangs. We have to invest in getting the unattached youth, many of whom are both victims and the perpetrators of crime, into programs which can re-socialize them.
Right.
So you can't just spend the money on police and soldier. Yes, you have to give them the resources, but you need to cut off the feeder which feeds into criminal activity. And we are committed to doing some of those things. So I just want people to understand a PMP government going to be responsible, but there are areas of transformation that this country needs if we're going to move forward to reduce the inequities in our society. Jamaica has become a more unequal society since COVID. There are people who have benefited and have done well, but there are a lot of people who, quite frankly, have moved from the margins into poverty.
Worse off.
Worse off. And you cannot leave them. If you leave them alone, that becomes your social problem down the road.
Yeah. Well, probably that explains a lot about the level of anger. Because I'm sure if the question is asked, are you better off today than you were a year ago, 2 years ago, 7 years ago? The resounding answer would be no.
No.
No, absolutely not.
And again, the minister is going to trot out the unemployment numbers. It's the lowest in the history of country, blah blah blah, blah blah blah. But the reality is, a lot of people have opted out of the workforce, meaning they just decide them now look for a job. Some of them may be doing their own little hustling or business on the side, whatever. So you can boast about lowest unemployment, but the reality, you as an urban MP, I'm an urban MP, we know the people in the hundreds of young people in our constituency who are
Yes.
looking for work and who come to us every day
Yes.
and can't find work, right? And
Yes.
some of them just get frustrated and stop, right?
Yes. Want to thank Marjorie and Arceling for those positive comments. Um, I don't know if you're hearing my dogs. You have dogs too, right?
Yeah, but as I told you, I'm not at my house. So.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but mine are acting up.
Acting up now.
Julian,
Oh,
we have dealt with a number of issues. And thanks, Comrade Janice, for that. People want to hear us, but somehow it appears as if they are not hearing us. Because what you have said to me today, I've heard you say them over and over. So we have to find a way for
to
our
reach to
reach.
our supporters and others.
Yeah,
I get the complaint all the time, and sometimes it frustrates me because I say to people, listen, we can show you the releases we put out, this interview, blah, blah, blah. The reality is a lot of people don't engage traditional media. They're in social media or in other spaces, and we have to make sure that our message gets to them in all the different media that they are interacting in. There are some people who have their own YouTube channels and doing things, and
yeah,
I mean, I'm amazed at the amount of views they get. And maybe
yeah.
we have to look at that non-traditional way of having discussions like this so we can reach more people.
Right,
But
right.
um, but yes, I get the complaint all the time that
Yeah,
people feel they're not hearing enough of us and they're not seeing us out there speaking on behalf of and defending the issues on their behalf because they're very clear that it really is they need us to speak on their behalf.
yeah. You know what I will do? In addition to asking people to share this live, I think some of these platforms that we use, we should try to find a way to get them into our group meetings
Yes,
where
yes.
comrades gather. And
Hmm.
meetings don't have to be physical meetings anymore, but we
Anymore,
could
right,
have a meeting to hear what the finance spokesperson said on
right,
Facebook Live today. Um,
correct.
it will add tremendously to enabling our people to be informed.
And I will commit. I mean, I speak in the budget debate on the 9th of March that,
Yes.
we'll put together our talking points and the leader speaks the following week to explain not just a critique of the government, but explain what we would do differently. It's important that people understand that, I mean, while we're committed to the same fiscal framework, we have different priorities.
Yeah.
And there are areas that we believe the country has to transform if we're going to build a better society.
Yeah.
And as a party, we are committed to those things. And we're going to lay it out, support for SMEs. I don't think enough is being done to provide access of funding for SMEs. We saw $300 million returned because
Yeah.
people don't access it. Now, that raises a whole lot of questions for me. What
Yes.
was it too bureaucratic for people to apply? Did people know about the program? Because that don't make sense. Not in an environment where so many of the SMEs are balling out for money. So there are issues there that I believe can be tackled, and we'll be talking about them in the budget debate, and we'll ensure that talking points go out so comrades
Yeah.
know what our position on these issues are.
And Julian, every Saturday morning we do a 10K.
I know that.
Yes, but we can never ever get you to come and
It's too
participate.
far from me, man. It's too far from me. I do a run on a Saturday morning. I go to about 5 o'clock and
Yeah.
I do about 4.5 miles, a 4.5 mile run every Saturday morning too.
Not many people know that you used to be a big cricketer,
I used
Play
to be a big
for
cricketer, yeah.
school.
Yeah, man, at Campion, and I played cricket at UA as well. But I,
You know,
I, I still ride my bicycle and I still go out and I need to do more, but I still go out and
yeah.
do my exercise because you
People
have to.
people see us and they see us on TV. And
Right,
sometimes them don't appreciate that we are just like them, just
absolutely.
regular people
Regular people do
who
the
who
regular
want
things
to see Jamaica become a better
better.
place.
Yeah, I mean, I have young children. I have an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I mean, I want them to grow up in this society. There are things I could do as a youngster growing up, like walking on the street, and my parents never have to worry about that. But me couldn't make my youth them go up on the road now. Okay, you don't know what happened to them. I don't want them to live in a society where they're afraid to go out at night time. No, and these are issues that we can tackle, but you have to get to the root cause. The root cause is not just policing; it is finding out where the breakdown in our education system is that produces so many people who can't read and write after spending 10 years in high school, or a breakdown in family values. There are a number of things, and we can't kick the can down the road. If we want a better Jamaica, we have to do it. So
Yeah.
that is our commitment as a party.
All right, so that's Julian J. Robinson. How is your father? I can't come in and ask you about your father.
He's doing well. He's in the Hague. He's in his last of 9 years at the International Court of Justice. So
The last year?
yeah, he has been there. Well, he has been in the Hague for a very long time, 20 odd years, but it's a 9-year term. So come next year, February, he'll retire and come back home. So, but
Wow.
physically well, that's the most important thing. And he's
All right, we're losing you again.
yeah, I'm back. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, heal him up for us.
Yeah, man, we'll do.
We certainly respect him. All right. So everybody will understand that we are not going to be on next Friday, and I'm not going to say why.
Why not? That would be the best live to have. Live and in living cover from the savannah.
1 year I didn't enjoy it, and 1 year I didn't enjoy it because when I saw what they wanted me to wear, it was in total green. I said, no, sir. I'm not.
No, man, when I take a picture and send it back home and say, switch.
Never happened. What happened? But yes, we're going to take a 1-week break. We'll be back shortly after that. Remember, Julian is going to be speaking the 9th.
9th of March. Yeah, and we will ensure, again, that a lot of people don't necessarily tune into the budget debates because they find it long and boring, but we'll ensure that the main points are pulled out of the presentation and circulated so that people can hear it, understand it, and know that we are not the same. We are not like this government.
Yes.
There are areas of priority that we believe in that are critical to transforming the country, and we are committed to taking on those things as a party.
And the truth is, Julian doesn't speak for a long time. He gets to the point. He, according to Marjorie, hits the nail on the head and move on. So I think we should all try to tune in to Julian on the 9th of March. Yes. We are starting on time now, so once you get there between 2 and 2:15, you'll be able to hear his take on the budget. We really want to invite everybody. We're going to try to do a direct feed live from Parliament on this Facebook site page as well. Julian, thanks very, very much, man.
Thank you. Thank you, Philip. Thank you for having me. And let me big up the comrades and all the other persons who have logged on to your program. And thank you for continuing to provide a medium for us to interact with our supporters and others.
Respect. Thanks. Angela, Angela Chaplin is the chairman of the greatest constituency in the world.
She's not in mine, so I don't know which one that is.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Julian. Really, really appreciate you coming on today. All the best to you.
Good.
Cheers.